Hello, everyone. My name is Katrina Richter-Lunn, and I'll be presenting my paper, Affective Matter, Sensorial Interpretations of Covert Physiological Signals for Therapeutic Mediation. This work is co-authored by Professor José Luis Garcia del Castillo Lopez and executed at the Harvard Graduate School of Design in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Although there is a number of crises that occupy our world today, all of which are extraordinarily important in balancing our ecosystem, mental health disorders, stress, and anxiety remain among the leaders of these crises, impacting every individual, regardless of their geographic location, socioeconomic background, gender, or race. Due to my own struggles with stress and anxiety and the number of people close to me who suffer from similar strains, I've made it a personal goal in my work to investigate how, as a designer, architect, and technologist, I can address this pressing issue in our world today. It is with this ambition that I embarked on this work, which seeks to demonstrate how human, machine, and sensorial interactions can be leveraged via affective computing to propose more seamless, accessible, and amiable solutions for addressing mental health. In order to give you an overview of the domains in which this paper lies, I have divided my research into three main categories: psychophysiology and embodied cognition, sensory environments and design, and affective computing and human-machine interaction, which, as you can imagine, all have a great deal of overlap and influence on each other. Starting with psychophysiology, there's a huge number of ways in which we can start to collect physical and neurological information, which can inform us of various cognitive and emotional outcomes, all of which provide different layers of insight. However, for the purpose of this research, we focus primarily on electrodermal activity and heart rate variability in communicating an individual's cognitive state. For those who are not very familiar with these terms, here is a very, very brief overview. Electrodermal activity, otherwise known as EDA, represents the changes in the electrical properties of the skin, previously called galvanic skin response and used in lie detecting machines. EDA is modulated by the sympathetic branch of our autonomic nervous system, otherwise known to control our activating or fight and flight responses. And then there's heart rate variability, also known as HRV, which represents the variation in time between your heartbeats. Unlike EDA, heart rate variability is controlled by both branches of your autonomic nervous system, your parasympathetic and sympathetic, and essentially gives us an idea of the level of communication happening between these two branches. So if variation is high, this indicates good communication between both sides and a healthy nervous system, while low variability shows association with stress, anxiety, and depression. So you might ask yourself how we are collecting all of this data. In this research, we are using the FDA-approved E4 wristband from Empatica. It measures a number of different physiological signals such as EDA, heart rate, body temperature, movement, and blood volume pulse, and has allowed us to continuously and passively track all of this data longitudinally and in quote, the wild. So here is a highly personal snapshot into 5 days of my life. Sadly, not too extraordinarily exciting, I'm sorry, but you can quickly identify where levels of EDA seem to rise the most. Interestingly, sleep shows consistent spikes in EDA throughout the night, which is a little bit of a hot topic in the world of sleep research right now. But other than sleep, you can see patterns of EDA related to meetings, exercise, and social interaction. But even more interesting, in my opinion, is when you look at this data in correlation with other physiological metrics, such as movement, skin temperature, and heart rate, since it can start to give you a better idea of why these spikes might be occurring, and also allow you to apply conditional statements to avoid false readings of stress and anxiety. So now that I've covered a brief overview of psychophysiology, I would like to touch on sensorial response. In order to suggest a possible methodology that explores our sensory perception, we must first look at each sense in isolation and the range of cognitive impact each of these senses hold on mood and emotion. In this work, the senses targeted are haptic, olfactory, visual, and auditory. Haptic, for example, has been studied as a strategy to soothe individuals. Methods include light pressure, temperature, and vibration. Auditory has been primarily explored through the lens of translating biometric data into sonic interpretations for both the performative purposes and increasing self-awareness. Vision, one of the noblest of our senses and historically considered the most dominant. Many studies focus their research on the impact of light in relation to attention, focus, and tranquility. Lastly, there is the sense of smell, perhaps the second most pervasive sense after vision. It's both a powerful tool in influencing mood and behavior, as well as highly personal. Lastly, we'll take a quick look at the field of affective computing and human-machine interaction. Historically, the field of affective computing has primarily looked like this, with a focus revolving around software applications which collect, process, and interpret various data to assess a person's affective state, and in turn respond empathetically and emotively to the user. However, over the past few years, we have seen the field expand outside of simply software applications and devices to areas such as wearables, which react both passively and actively to our body's movement, temperature, and surrounding, to active and programmable materials, which when actuated change and transform based on their innate material properties, to social robotics, where the communication between human and robot no longer is a linear process, but rather a conversation. And finally, we see affective computing filter its way into full-scale exhibits and installations, which showcase intimate information through artistic renditions and immersive environments. All of this to showcase that with the power of today's technology, scientific advancements, and design sensibility, we've been able to push these fields to new extents through the interdisciplinary overlap that occurs between them. It is in this overlap where we would like to situate the work and the methodology followed for the design interventions. I will now present to you 4 pieces which investigate a different combination of sensorial experiences, which respond to specific physiological signals. Each of these pieces follow the same closed loop system. Starting with a human, a collection of their raw physiological signals are collected. This data is then analyzed and assessed to be linked with a certain emotional state. This interpretation then actuates a specific desired sensorial output, which in turn influences the human through their experience of that stimulus. The first piece we would like to introduce explores both haptic and auditory sensory stimulus and sits intimately on your wrist. This piece looks specifically at interpreting patterns of EDA and heart rate variability to recognize signs of stress and anxiety, to in turn pneumatically actuate silicone pockets facing the interior of the wrist. These air pockets seek to mimic slow inhale and exhales both auditorily and haptically, to soothe and bring embodied awareness of one's cognitive state. Additionally, the slight pressure felt by the piece adds another layer of haptic comfort through the mimicked feeling of being held. This multi-material piece inlaid with 2 soft silicone pockets inflates through plastic tubes connected to an air pump and microcontroller. When signs of heightened EDA and low heart rate variability are detected in unison, the pneumatic system is deployed. Once activated, the pump follows a slow graduated breathing pattern, namely a 4 seconds inhale, 7 seconds hold, and 8 seconds exhale. The second piece, much like the first, looks at haptic guidance, however, this time with no auditory stimulus and in the form of soft vibrations rather than pressure. The haptic chair attachment detects heightened and low levels of electrodermal activity, signaling an individual's level of emotional arousal in conjunction with motion gathered from an accelerometer. Observed in parallel, this data can illustrate correlations between prolonged periods of low movement and decreased focus and restlessness. In response, a series of 20 vibration motors lining the fins of the piece actuate when signals suggest either a state of restlessness and agitation or drowsiness and decreased focus. In response, the haptic guidance system emits patterns of soft vibration, which gradient in power to again mimic the 4-7-8 breathing technique explored in the wrist piece, with the primary goal being to mitigate extreme emotional states through passive and embodied techniques to in turn influence our autonomic nervous system. The desk attachment looks solely at olfaction and the power of scent diffusion for focus and relaxation. Similarly to the chair, this piece looks to measure the edge conditions of emotional arousal, which in this context, which suggest either decreased attention and sleepiness or an increase in stress. Based on literature which found that low levels exposure to the aroma of peppermint enhances aspect of cognition and mood, and that lavender oil promotes calmness in stressful scenarios, we have proceeded in using these two aromas for this piece. Devised of a multitude of layers, this piece consists of a 3D printed rib structure which wraps around the desk, and thanks to a thin layer of nylon placed over the top of the piece, has the dual capability of being used as a mousepad. Underneath its structure lies 100% cotton embroidered with 40-gauge nichrome wire with 2 discrete paths to represent 2 separate heating systems. These paths directly correlate to the openings in the 3D structure, which act as chambers to house the specific scent to be activated. Hydrogel-infused beads sit between these apertures, carrying either the scent of peppermint or lavender. Thanks to their thermally sensitive properties, the hydrogels increase their solubility when temperatures increase, resulting in a release of the scent-infused liquid through evaporation. Depending on the physiological signals received, a certain heating path will be deployed, resulting in the activation of one of the 2 scents. Lastly, I will present the light attachment, which focuses its capability on tempering the quality of the light which the bulb emits, to in turn cater the emission of brightness based on the needs of the individual. With a number of precedents illustrating the effects of light brightness on one's mood and alertness, this piece seeks to very simply mimic a dimmer by leveraging material properties and heating actuation. Embedded with 28-gauge nichrome wire and a bilayer material of PET and aluminum, the piece houses any typical LED light bulb. Due to the difference in expansion rates between the PET and aluminum, when heated, a certain curling occurs, resulting in greater permeability of light. With the nichrome wire's ability to reach up to 50 degrees Celsius within a few seconds, the lamp reacts nearly instantly to its actuation. This piece looks to mediate one's environment through the subtle influence of light diffusion. In order to evaluate these pieces in a timely manner, it was chosen to provoke stress through the 2-minute clinical test, which is often used to determine signs of intellectual impairment, also referred to as the Serial 7 test. While participants focus on their mathematical task, their EDA, heart rate variability, movement, and skin temperature are being recorded through the E4 wristband. From the time of the test begins, these signals communicate if the participant surpasses a certain threshold of EDA and heart rate variability, indicating a rapid onset of cognitive overload, which in turn activates the sensory stimulus embedded in the piece. Please see more about the takeaways of this initial study in the full paper. So what have we learned from all of this? Well, we have seen that the field of affective computing has extensively grown in research around improving software design, but we have yet to see these benefits fully infiltrate into disciplines such as product design, material engineering, and architecture. Our built environment is indisputably essential in being able to integrate these systems seamlessly into the world. And although the projects exhibited in this paper only begin to explore this potential through wearables and furniture augmentations, one can envision a future where these actuated systems and materials become embedded at the infrastructural scale, providing immersive experiences to address societal strain. Beyond the need for greater human-machine communication lies the necessity for technology and design to engage in the pursuit of accessible therapeutics and recognize mental health as a growing crisis which can and should be addressed by our disciplines. Thank you.